From Boston, Crockett's Victory Garden. Welcome to Crockett's Victory Garden.
I'm Jim Crockett. Do you remember about 3 weeks ago, I showed you this phlox called a Carolina phlox. This was the one with white flowers, just about gone by now. And at that time I said the way to propagate this plant was to take cuttings from the top of the plant, just like this. Well, we took some and went in the greenhouse and put them in sand. They have rooted. And we're going in the greenhouse a little while and pot some of those up. But we're going to talk now about not the Carolina phlox, but the garden phlox and how to propagate this one, which is entirely different. Now, the first variety I want to show you is still hanging on. This is the one called Prince George. It's a very lovely red. It's faded a little bit at this time of the year, but the fact we have any blossoms at all is rather remarkable. Now, this kind of a plant is grown from a root cutting rather than a stem cutting. And I want you to notice what I do here. Take my spade and put it right in close to the edge of the clump of the roots and just push down on it like that. Pry that aside a little bit. Make another cut over here and pull it out, and we should find in here some very fine roots. These roots right here is what we're going to use for propagating. I'm going to slip these into a little plastic bag here, which is conveniently left for me, with the name Prince George. And we're going to take these in the greenhouse and I'll show you how to propagate them. Now let's go up to another variety. Now this one is called White Admiral. And White Admiral is still trying, even as late in the season as this, to send out some flowers. Now you won't be able to see this because it's going to have to reach way over behind the plant here. I can take my word for it, we'll get out a few of those roots. There they come. A few roots of White Admiral. Now this doesn't seem like a very auspicious beginning to grow plants, but this is the way to grow phlox. Now you can always divide your clump of plants up, but this is how you get a great many of them. Now we'll go way back here to a variety called American Legion. Do the same thing on this one. Just get a few roots out of the base down in here. Let me tell you, we can get hundreds of plants from just a few roots, just like that. Put American Legion in here. Now, this is not all that we're going to do today, because I promised you that I'd show you how to build a cold frame, and also we are going to plant some bulbs, some that we can force indoors in the wintertime. Well, there's something, I have a first primrose has blossomed in the greenhouse, but that's not the most important thing I want to tell you right now. It's that the frost has arrived at Crockett's Victory Garden, and it doesn't hit all plants uniformly. Now here, for example, is some basil. Gone completely. This kind of a plant just goes up like this, and we'll throw this in the compost pile. We just chuck that right over in there. By next summer, that will be beautiful compost. Then we come back here, and you can see what's happened to our tomato plants. Tomato plants have really gone by. I'm so glad last week that I picked those green tomatoes and put them in the cooler so that we could ripen them. Now the peppers, as you see too, have just about had it. There's a few little fruit, but they won't make it any more this year. They're gone. The marigolds are trying rather hard, but I'm afraid that they've had their season. The ageratum beneath them is completely gone, but that's not true of everything. I want you to look over here at this early purple head cauliflower. Isn't that growing? Now that's twice as big as it was last week, and another week from now it'll be half again as large again. This is, you begin to see the purple color, a very delightful vegetable which ripens late in the fall. And of course, anything in the cabbage family, just as you see these cabbages down here, perfectly resistant to most frosts. But what I wanted to show you in this part of the garden is an improved version of my cold frame. Now, you've seen me use a cold frame time and time again in this garden. Last year, we had one with just a flexible sheet plastic tacked on a simple frame for the cover. But when it rained, you know, the water would kind of gather in the sags of it. Now we have a material which is called fiberglass. This is a rigid corrugated fiberglass, a clear material, which has a great deal of rigidity and of course will tolerate a snow load. Water will just run right off it. Let me talk to you, before I talk about the cold frame itself, what we use the cold frame for. Now, you remember the cold frame back in early spring. That's when this cold frame was filled with my tomato seedlings, peppers, eggplants, things of that nature. The kind of ones that you grow on your windowsill, and the shock of putting from an indoor environment out into the direct garden would be too great. So they go through the transition of the cold frame. And this is where we put them, right in here. Now, at this time, during the summertime, you remember we used a cold frame as our seed bed. And we started our lettuce and our cauliflower. Those very plants that you just saw were started in this particular cold frame, along with a number of flowers. For example, here's one of the flowers that we started there, foxglove. This is a perennial. Now, this particular plant is susceptible to winter damage if it gets too wet. Well, we put it in a cold frame over winter, put the cover down on it, and it's great protection. Now, let's look for a moment at the construction of this, because this material is something that you can buy at any lumber yard. You notice that the fiberglass itself has these corrugations, and underneath the corrugations, you don't have to go to any great trouble to cut out wood, because you buy these little pieces of wood with the corrugations, which fit right into the plastic, you see, and so you can make a nice tight fit. We reinforce the ends in here with angle irons, heavier hinges down at the bottom. Now, this is a great thing which will last you for many, many years. If you can't afford a greenhouse, you certainly should have a cold frame. And if you have a greenhouse, it's even more reason that you should have a cold frame, because it's a great extender. Now, I have one, the body of it, you might say, set up here, and I want to disassemble it and show you just how easy it is to put one together or to take one apart for storage. Now, you see here in the corners, let's look at this corner over here. You see, this is a slip hinge. We simply have a piece of wire in there, pull the wire out, and this will pull right apart like this. Now, notice, first of all, I have a piece of wood which is 15 inches wide and 4 feet long. Just lay this right down here for a minute. We'll go down to the front of the cold frame, and let's take the front of it off, like this. And I have another piece which is 9 inches wide and 4 feet long, just like so. Now we'll end up with our side pieces. Now we have a side piece like that. Now, what you notice, these side pieces, these are the ones which give us the 15-inch height at the high end and a 9-inch at the low end. We'll put these all together, and we have a 4-foot square. So we go to the lumber yard. If you get a 4x8 sheet of exterior plywood, 1/2-inch thick, you can make 2 cold frames, because we have only a 1/2 sheet of exterior grade plywood, and here we have all the makings except for little hardware, and we'll give those some painting to keep them from rusting. This will last you, I would estimate at least 10 years in your garden, and a marvelous investment. Now, I said today also we'd talk about bulbs, because bulbs are one of those things you can put in a cold frame, because you know how great it is in Valentine's Day or sometime in March if you could have some tulips or some daffodils blossoming right on your own windowsill. Well, go out now and buy the bulbs. Now, this first bulb I want to show you is tulip. This, by the way, let me show you the name of this one, because it's a great one for forcing. If you're going to force tulips, you want to look for the single or double early flowering varieties. This one, Kaiserschroon, is an old variety, hundreds of years old, but still a perfectly good one. I'm going to knock these right out just for a minute and show you that the soil that I'm using is just ordinary garden soil. There's no special preparation at all, because within these bulbs, all of the flower has already been formed. But I want you to look for a minute at the bulb, because there's a special way to plant it. Rather flat, you see, on this side, and rounded on this side. Well, from this flat side of the bulb, one great big leaf comes over and heads in this direction. So if I set this bulb like this against the edge of the pot, this leaf will come over and help to hide the pot. So when you put them in like this, make the flat side of the bulb against the pot, like so. Put these right around. And you can put the bulbs so that they're just about touching one another, because it isn't, all this soil is going to do is to give them sufficient support so that they won't topple over, and it will give them an opportunity to take up moisture from the soil. We'll just space those out so they're almost touching. Push them in so the tips are just about at the soil level. Now, you notice outdoors we plant them 4 to 6 inches deep, but here just barely above the soil. Now, I'll just use a little more soil over the top of those. And those little fellows are all planted for the winter. Now, remember that the normal life cycle of a tulip or any of these bulbs is this. It's going to blossom in the spring, rest in the summer, plant in the fall and blossom the next spring. But suppose we give it a short winter. What I'm going to do now is to give these bulbs a short winter. Let's take another one here. These are hyacinths. A purple, a red-flowered hyacinth. You see the bulbs themselves are purple in color. A variety called Amsterdam. Very nice variety. We'll set about 3 of those in like this. You see, there's no great trick to this. It's just the simplest possible culture. To get all of the work has been done for you. You've just got to give them a little bit of encouragement to get them blossoming. Now, if we can find the label for Amsterdam, I'll go in there. Put the label for Kaiserschroon over in here. Now we'll plant up one more. Let's do the crocus. You see these little crocus bulbs? I already put some soil under them. They're beginning to make nice new growth already. They're just so anxious to get started. Cover these over with a little soil, and they're ready to go into a cold frame. Now, a cold frame isn't the only place you can put them. If you remember seeing this show last winter, you know that we went out in the middle of winter to a trench in the garden. We pulled bulbs like this out of the trench. They had already begun to grow. We brought them in where it was warm, and in no time at all we had flowers. So we have a trench here in the garden. Oh, it's about 9 to 10 inches deep. We put down in the base of it a couple of inches of coarse pebbles like this for drainage. And all we have to do now is to set these pots right in here. We're going to cover around them with some sand. The reason being that we must be sure that the soil in the pot stays moist. And we'll just, as we continue to pot up more of these, we will fill sand in all around them. And then we'll wait until the ground just begins to freeze. Then we will put dry leaves on top of here, then cover them with a tarpaulin. But let me make one very important point to you. We are not going to put any leaves on here until the ground freezes, because mice will go out looking for a nice warm home. And if they see a pile of leaves, they say, ha-ha, we'll go right under here, and all of those nice bulbs to eat. What a wonderful treat it would be for them to get under here in the winter. The ground is frozen, they won't go under it. That's one of the secrets. Now let's go in the greenhouse. We'll show you a number of things in there. As I said, we have a primrose in blossom, an English, and a polyanthus primrose, which is blossoming out of season, I might add. But the first thing I want to bring in is this little miniature greenhouse in which we have rooted a number of cuttings. Now, get this out of the way. Can you see what we have here? These are, right in here, the cuttings of the Miss Lingard or Carolina phlox. Now they have reached the stage where it's ready to put them in flower pots. You notice we'll just pull one of these out of here, check its root system. Now that's what I like to see. And then a beautiful root system coming in here. How easy it is to propagate some of your own perennials. We'll put this in some potting soil, like so. Now this is a kind of a plant which should not go directly to the garden this fall. This plant is, you might say, a convalescent. And this will go into our cold frame. And then we know that this plant is going to be perfectly strong for next spring. Next spring is the time to put this out into the garden. All right, you see we have a number of different kinds of things growing here, but the roots are on them. They're ready to be potted up into their separate containers in potting soil to grow on from there. Well, let's just push this to one side for a minute. We have a few other things that we want to show you. This makes a nice little miniature greenhouse. It's a little place to keep the humidity high when you're rooting the cuttings. Now the next thing, I think the next thing I'll do is to show you how to make these root cuttings. Now this is for the root cuttings of the phlox, and I have here an ordinary tray, a little plastic tray of garden soil. Again, not particular soil. This is just good garden soil. And we ought to have, I have 3 of these in my pockets. Let me show you exactly what we have here. This one is called Prince George. So I'll put Prince George right there. I'm going to divide this into 3 compartments. We'll take these roots with a pair of scissors, and I want you to notice how easy it is to propagate garden phlox. Just cut these like this into pieces about 1 inch long. Every one of these will make a new plant. And you can have from this hundreds, thousands if you want to, by just taking those roots, cutting them up like this, and spreading them out on soil. Now we'll take ordinary potting soil or any kind of soil and cover them up about, roughly 1/2 inch deep. And these will be ready to go into our cold frame also. Next spring, these will start to grow, and you divide those little plants and put them out in rows in your garden. The first year, the phlox will be 4 or 5 inches tall. Another year, they'll be 1.5 foot tall and blossom. The third year, you'll have some very good plants. Now, we have the label for that one. This is White Admiral. We'll put right here in the middle. We'll just cut up the White Admiral the same way. Each section roughly 1 inch long. Now the roots look very, very small, but this doesn't make a bit of difference. This is all it takes to make them grow. Cover these over like so. I think this is a fascinating, the plant propagation is a very fascinating thing, because not only is the economics of it, but the fact that you can grow so many with such a small amount of trouble. I have one other here. This one should be American Legion. Put that in there. Shake off some of that old soil. Now we'll cut the sections about 1 inch long. So easy to do. Sprinkle those around a little bit and cover them over with soil. As I say, we'll keep these moist, put them in the cold frame. They'll be up and growing next spring. Well, now that I said that we had a primrose in blossom, I want to tell you that this primrose, this is a little one called a polyanthus. This was planted from seed in July. You can see the size of the plant now. Very husky plants. Now these are, the seed is very small, planted in July, transplanted in September, now making very good growth. This too will go into the cold frame. Next spring it'll go back out into the garden. This likes a little bit of shade, very easy to grow, but you should have a shady place and moist soil. Let's see, we have some paper whites. Paper white narcissus. Again, look at the nice growth that we have on those. Not quite ready to blossom yet, but if you can see the swelling coming in down here at the base of these stems, you know that that flower bud is coming right out. Soon it'll push its way through the top. Now, when your paper whites get about this size, it's time to plant a few more, because we'll keep a succession of flowers growing right straight through the most of the winter. Begin with, you can use soil or sand or anything. I just like to use a few pebbles just for physical support of them. Plant the bulbs in like this and fill some pebbles around them. Give them a drink of water. In a very short time, they'll be off and growing. Well, now, one of the things that we've been doing here lately is our plant clinic. And I am, well, a little grateful and a little bit awed by the fact that yesterday, when we asked around the television studio if anyone had some plants that they would like to have resurrected, well, just send down to the greenhouse. Well, someone has a lot of faith in me, because look what they gave me. This is a grape ivy, which is completely and totally dead. Now, I must tell this person, you save the flower pot on a place like that and get rid of the plant because it's beyond rescue. But we did get another one which can be helped. And this is a rather unusual plant you don't see very often, a type of peperomia. And unlike most, which are little clumpy plants, this thing is a vine, as you see. As a matter of fact, I understand when they started to pull this plant away from its place on a desk, found out that this whole long streamer had grown on behind a radiator. Well, I want you to look at the new leaves and the old leaves, and you can tell immediately how the kind of trouble this plant is in. Here is one of the original leaves that was on the plant when it was purchased, and here is one that grew when the light was poor. All right, see how short the distance is between one leaf and the next one? About 1 inch. Look at this when you have it without enough light. A long distance between leaves and very tiny leaves. This plant can be resurrected, but what I'm going to do is to start it back here where the growth is still reasonably strong, and cut back some of this weak stuff like so. We'll have a very nice plant out of it eventually, and it won't take very long at that. This is what we have at this point. Now, this plant is ready for repotting. As you can see, this is a rather, with just a little bit of added soil in the bottom. Put that one like this. Now, this plant has a new lease on life, and if you ask me, I think it already looks better just having had those long streamers cut off. But even those streamers have value, because that is, if you want 100 more peperomias, this is the easy way to get them. Now we have that plant is all set. We can take the streamers like this and cut off each joint like this. And every one of those will make a new plant. You see, it already forms a root on the bottom, even as it's growing, and this is normal for this plant. Planted in the soil, you don't even need sand or anything. We'll just put a little soil in like this. Stick this one down in like that. Now from the joint where the leaf and the stem join, we'll get a new stem will come out of that, and we'll have any number of more peperomias from this one. Peperomia, by the way, is a plant which will stand rather poor light, but you know, even they have a point where they say, we've got to have more than this. Let's talk about a few questions today. The first is from Alexandria, New York. When is a good time to divide a bleeding heart plant? Now, I presume you're talking about the old-fashioned bleeding heart that grows about 30 inches tall and has those long streamers of red flowers in the spring. Well, a nice time to divide them is right now because the plants are completely dormant. You'll find a great fat, rather soft-textured yellow root under the soil. Cut that into any number of pieces and replant it immediately. You can also do this in midsummer because this particular plant dies down in midsummer and remains dormant until the next spring. From Burbank, Illinois, what vegetables can I grow in a 20 by 20 foot area that is 90% shade? Well, I'm going to be very frank and say don't try to grow vegetables. It's just, you'll be terribly disappointed. If I were you, I'd buy my vegetables from a stand someplace, but I would grow some woodland wildflowers and you'd have good luck with them. Can I use the seeds of my Jerusalem artichoke as I would those of sunflower seeds for propagation? This is from New Hampshire. Now, although your Jerusalem artichoke has blossoms, they very rarely set seeds. So what you have to use are the tubers, and that's the way to propagate the Jerusalem artichoke. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Now, next week, I'm going to introduce you to another method of extending the planting season by using cloches. This is something very popular in England. And then I'm going to show you how to pasteurize some compost without smelling up the kitchen.
I'm Jim Crockett in Crockett's Victory Garden. I hope you enjoy the program every week.